Anything wrong?
Do you do any Q&A, or do people ask questions?
We allow people to ask questions. Yep. And
Okay.
Lana will handle that up front.
Okay.
The recording has started, but I will chop any conversation.
Yeah,
before.
right. Yeah, Katie will cut it in the front. T-1. You ready to go, Lana?
I am, once Katie gives me the cue.
Okay. Still popping in. 11 o'clock. Here we go.
Great. You're all set, Lana.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for Mondays with Mark. A few housekeeping announcement, especially for those of you who may be joining us for the first time. Camera and microphone. Kindly turn them both off so that there are no distractions from Mark and our guests this morning or for the other attendees. Questions and comments. We welcome them, and there are two ways for you to bring those to our attention. The first is in writing. You may enter them in the chat function in Teams. That's that little conversation looking bubble on your screen. Just click on that, type in there, and then we'll monitor the chat throughout our time together this morning. Secondly, you may ask your questions or give us your comments verbally, and you have two options there, both of which will permit at the end of the program. So you may either raise your hand in Teams, or when we've indicated it's okay to do so, you may unmute yourself. And if you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself by entering *6. So until then, though, we do ask that you remain muted so we can hear our guest and our host. So again, thanks for joining us. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for Mondays with Mark, our district director here in Rhode Island, Mark Hayward. Mark?
Thank you very much, Lana. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone, and hopefully everybody had a great weekend. We love doing this on Monday, and we have a real special guest today. And you know, the interesting thing is Lisa Raiola, she is a household name to everybody in the state. Anybody who touches food service or restaurants somehow or some way has been associated with Lisa. And let me just give a little bit of a background. What you're doing now, Lisa, is you're the Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Roger Williams University. You're also teaching nutrition and public health. And by the way, I need that desperately. That's a separate subject. And you're also serving on the Board of Trustees at Roger Williams University, which is really great. Your location, Hope in Maine, which is on Warren, Rhode Island, is, you know, I describe this to people and they say, this can't be, but the concept of how you put this whole thing together is just absolutely amazing. And I just happened to go by Hope in Maine, and this goes back, Lisa, probably, because I know you started in 2009, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. I just went there and we just did another tour. I think at the time, Joan and I were talking to you about expanding some of the seminar services that we have. And I go upstairs, and in the kitchen upstairs are volunteers who are making salsa. Tito's salsa. And I have been buying Tito's salsa forever. And I never knew that Tito's was made at Hope in Maine. It just absolutely blew my mind. And I tell people when, if you're out buying salsa, yes, there's a lot of products that are made in the middle of nowhere, and it's done, from a wholesale standpoint and then sold to Stop and Shop and, Aldi's or wherever. I said, but if you really want to have good salsa, there is stuff that made at Hope and Maine and I'm addicted to it, Lisa. But this is just one of many stories that have come out of Hope and Maine, and I'm really thrilled that you can join us today. Why don't you give us a little bit of background, your background, and people continue to pop in as we talk.
Sure.
And just tell me, the concepts, because I know Warren is just the first stop.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for having me, Mark. I wouldn't want to spend my Monday morning any other way than with you.
Thank you.
And thanks for your leadership for our regional office. We all benefit from what you do, and I know how important it is. So thank you for that. Hope and Maine is really a project that found me. I think some people know that I was going to start my own food business maybe almost 13 years ago now, and doing prepared meals for people who were medically shut in, who were recovering from illness, undergoing chemo, maybe just had a baby, maybe just post-surgical. And I really found this building, but sort of by accident. And when I found the building, I decided that the better thing to do would be to start this project, because it was during the Great Recession of 2009, and many people had lost their jobs then and were looking for, were interested in starting businesses. And I realized how difficult it was to start a food business, because I had explored that for myself. And so really, it's in this building in Warren, sort of just by dumb luck. I would say it's the best bad plan I ever had, because it's not great to put a manufacturing facility in a 100-year-old 3-story elementary school, but that's what we did. And the great thing is that it's on Main Street. We are in a conversation with the community, that not only the community of Warren, but the community of Rhode Island, about food. What's the provenance of your food? Where does it come from? Why is that important? Why does it relate to our quality of life? So, 13 years later, we've been able to launch over 400 food businesses out of Hope and Maine. And that's because we not only created the shared use infrastructure around me with the 7 commercial kitchens, but also we provide technical and business assistance. We provide access to markets, both direct to consumer, D2C, and B2B, business to business. And we also provide connections to capital. And that's kind of the ecosystem that small businesses need to thrive. And I think that's been a real, a very effective formula for our entrepreneurs, our foodpreneurs, as we call them.
Lisa, it's more than it's really a teaching facility as well, is it not? I mean, it's not only, we always say, that people, if you can cook, you can own a restaurant. That's not necessarily true. And that what you're doing is you're teaching all of the basics right across the board, not only cooking, but what is the management aspect of it. And I wonder if you just touch on that.
Yeah. So our tagline is "Make food your business," and a lot of people can make food, but not as many people can make it their business.
That's true.
And we don't want people. We don't just sort of hand you a key and say, "There's your kitchen." We want you to be successful here, because we all know that small businesses, and especially small food businesses, have about 1,000 ways to die, right? So you really need to learn some basic information, and we have an onboarding process that involves a class, a series of workshops called the first course. So the first course teaches you about packaging and labeling and food production, and how to get your food processing license. We offer you need to have your food safety manager's license to be here, but we offer this roadmap of basic information. It is like a recipe, right, that gets you to the starting line, that kind of jumpstarts your business to the starting line, where you're producing it legally, you're meeting the regulatory requirements, you understand how to take something that was a recipe, and everyone says, everyone tells me I should sell this lemonade or these brownies, and And I was like, okay, but now you have to take that recipe and you have to make that recipe a product, which means it has to be manufactured consistently. You've got to get it into some type of container. You've got to get it labeled. You've got to decide, are you going to sell it to the eater? Are you going to sell it to a grocery store? Are you going to sell it to a restaurant? All of that is different kinds of regulatory requirements. And so that's what we teach people here so they can confidently get to that starting line and start to grow and scale their small business.
So it's not just coming off the street and starting to cook and just doing everything kind of like that, bootstrapping everything. And you talked a little bit about regulations. How do you work with the Department of Health to make sure that they understand the requirements that they have to follow as they go through that process?
Right. So the Department of Health, first of all, I can't say enough great things about the Rhode Island Department of Health because they have been really integral to this whole project working. They, there's our health inspector is here sometimes several times a week. If you remember the TV show Murphy Brown, Mark, you're of my generation, so you'll remember that the painter lived at Candace Bergen's house. So the health department kind of lives here, and they really, they're very helpful in getting people again to that starting line and ensuring that when folks are starting off their business here, they're starting with safe food practices. They're starting by following the rules and understanding even what the rules are. So we are very thankful for the Rhode Island Department of Health because that's kind of what makes the Hope and Main model work.
So it's, I mentioned at the outset about the jarring of Tito's salsa, but the other, I mean, there are other individuals who actually do catering, or is that not correct?
Yep.
It's not only just making a product to sell to a third party, but I mean, there are full operations that also utilize Hope and Main.
Yeah. So we have everything from what we call consumer packaged goods, CPGs. So these are something in a bottle, a jar, a container, to meal prep services. You may be familiar with Feast and Fettle. They came out of Hope and Main. Savory Fairs out of Hope and Main. Lots of food trucks and restaurants have started here, places like PV Donuts or Hometown Poke or Ellie's Bakery for that matter. So we have people who are doing CPG, consumer packaged goods, and what I call FRE, food ready to eat, right? And so that's, and if you want to, have a food truck, many times you'll need a commissary kitchen. If you want to start a restaurant or a cafe, you can test your menus here and test your products and start, out by catering. And COVID has really changed so much consumer behavior where people are coming here to pick up food. They're coming here to pick up empanadas or baked goods or donut cakes or whatever's coming out of here. And these folks now don't have to have a brick and mortar, because once you have the brick and mortar, as we learned the hard way in COVID, that can be a challenge, right? Because you can't just pick it up and move it somewhere. And once you close it, it's difficult to sell, your product or your food. So we do that full range of CPG to what I call FRE, depending on the path that you want to take with your product.
So what's the percentage of, because I know you can only be open so many hours a day, and what's the percentage of kitchen capacity and what's taken at this point in time?
So that's a great question. We are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we have been open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since the day we opened, October 6th of 2014. Only like hospitals and prisons are open 24 hours a day. So we have created lots and lots of hours for people. And that enables us to have lots of people working out of here. So we could have, at any one time, 75, 80 members working out of Hope and Main. Because if you're making a CPG product, consumer packaged good, like a salsa, your run may be 4 hours or 8 hours, but that's what you need. And you need it maybe every other week. So you're not here all the time. You're not here 8 hours a day, every day. And that's what shared use infrastructure is about, Mark, because if I'm only using, 40 hours a month to run a production line, what a waste it would be for me to have to build a facility of my own because I'm not using it enough. And so shared use allows this fractional, right, ability to have a manufacturing operation where you don't have to build the factory. And that's what makes it an affordable way for so many food businesses to start. Otherwise, you'd have to build your own place. You'd have to have an immediate, the customers and the demand for your product. And that could crush your business before it ever gets started.
Right. Yeah, you said members. So what do you mean by members, and what are some of the requirements
Yeah.
in order to be a member?
So to be a member of Hope Maine, if you have a good food idea and it can legally be made here, you can become a member of Hope Maine. So it's not challenging to do. There's not like a vetting process that we screen people out. But again, we want people to be successful. We're not wanting you to come here to run your hobby because, when you just lose money, that's not good for you and it's not good for us. So we want you to be successful. So to be a member of Hope Maine, you apply online to the program. We talk to you. We have an intake process. And then from there, we have this onboarding process and the first course. And so we get you to the starting line, all your licenses, all your permits, all of, your education that you need to get started, your testing of your product and all of that. And once you're a member, you only pay for the hours, the kitchen hours that you use and the storage that you use, cold, dry, frozen storage. So if you use 8 hours a month, you only pay for 8 hours. There is a monthly fee that covers common area charges, that covers the fact that we are, promoting your business. But it's really a matter of a few $1,000s to start a food business here versus, tens of $1,000s to start a food business outside of Hope Maine, and hundreds of thousands if you're building, a restaurant or a factory.
So, and that's really important to know, because I don't think people understand the availability that they can have. So
Right.
I ask you, so of the 24 hours, Lisa, how much is actually still available if somebody wanted to come and to go through the process to get certified and do what needs to be done? So what kind of kitchen hours would be available? And there are 2 kitchens, correct?
We have 7 commercial kitchens, actually.
7 commercial kitchens.
Yeah, so we've expanded down the street. So we have 2 kitchens down the street, and we have another demonstration kitchen here, and then 4 commercial kitchens in addition to that in our facility, Mark. So we have lots of kitchens and, frankly, lots of capacity, because it's kind of like a university. People graduate, they start, they stop, they come, they go. We hope most people graduate, within a certain period of time. A lot of our people who started during COVID have just graduated or are graduating now, meaning they found their own facility. They have enough, they have enough customers and revenues to start their own, to have their own place. So we have capacity. And you've mentioned a few times we're in Warren, which can be sound far for some people, but from Providence, it's 15 minutes. However, we do know that it can be a challenge. So one of the things we're looking at is to get some kitchen space in Providence, where we can be closer to some other folks. Frankly, of our Rhode Island members, 45% come from the greater Providence area. So to be there will be helpful. Not because we don't necessarily have the capacity here, but because it'll be more convenient for people.
Yeah, and you and I have had lengthy discussions about the potentials of Providence, and I agree with you 100%, Lisa, that there is so much potential here. I think the community would respond very positively to having a facility here in Providence. But like you said, it's getting the right place at the right size at the right dollars.
Right.
Right. And that's a box that you have to check. And I fully understand that there, can be somewhat complicated. But you and I also live in Rhode Island. Everybody, the laugh was you needed to pack a lunch if you were going over the bridge.
Oh, yeah. Your lunch, your passport, the whole nine, to just to come over. Oh, and it's probably 2 bridges. So that's even more challenging. But, it's interesting. We have, like I said, 45% of our people from Rhode Island, because we draw from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, are from the greater Providence area. 60% of our businesses are women owned. 40% are owned by BIPOC folks of color. And we, that's just starting food businesses. And so, I feel like we've become more in tune with, the foodpreneur that comes to us. It's sort of like being a hospital. You get, the patients who you get, it's not who the hospitals don't advertise for patients, right? So we never really advertise for a certain, type of food business or a certain type of owner. It's who comes to us. So we've had to learn to be pretty, agile and really meet people where they are. And increasingly, the idea of being in Providence, I think, is going to be helpful. Offering more of our programs in multiple languages is going to be helpful. And that's partly why we're a member of the Rhode Island Business Empowerment Network with the Rhode Island Hispanic Chamber, the Center for Southeast Asians, the Rhode Island Black Business Association, because these are our pipelines because when they get a food business, they say, go to Hope in Maine, because they know, we'll work with them to take care of that business owner.
And anybody who has a question, you can either raise your hand or you can put the question in chat. We'd be more than happy to have Lisa respond to it if you have a question for us. You talked a little bit about COVID, Lisa. When you look at pre-COVID versus post-COVID, do you see a tremendous amount of increase of interest in Hope in Maine versus prior to that? And I'm talking about proportionally, because we're seeing a lot of people who, I've been here for a very long time. I've been in Rhode Island as a district director for 32 years. And we have always seen that in a down economy, we see a lot of people looking to, and the food business, a lot of people look to the food industry because they have some prior knowledge of it. Are you seeing the same kind of things that we're seeing here at SBA?
Yeah, 100%. Our applications have close to doubled post-COVID. And I'm not surprised at all. We started in a recession. We started, in 2009. So that, when there is a recession, when we have these kinds of, economic dips, people, explore those options, because self-employment is a form of employment, right? And starting your own business is a path to economic sustainability. And we, and in Rhode Island, you're able to, to use your unemployment to start your own business. So we are seeing that more here. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting that post-COVID, there's many, many more models. Like I said, consumer behavior has shifted dramatically in the food space. So before COVID, it was less than 10% of Americans had ever purchased food online. And now it's something like 58, 60% routinely are buying food online, ordering food online, going to pick it up, having it delivered to their home. So this has created phenomenal opportunities for people to start food businesses, because again, the bricks and mortar piece just isn't part of the critical path the way that it was before COVID.
Do you think that, because you talked about your association again, if you have if somebody who has not muted, Katie, if you could mute that individual, thank you very much. You mentioned Rhode Island Black Business Chamber of Commerce Association, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I think Marianne Matthews is also.
Yeah, Multicultural Innovation Center, SEG, Center for Women in Enterprise. These are all part of Fuerza Laboral, all part of Rhode Island Business Empowerment Network.
And the SBDC. And I know
yes.
is on, and Maggie has been very active in trying to help the restaurant industry. I mean, if you were to give the individuals who are out there, because are you seeing a disproportionate number coming from those communities versus the community at large?
Oh, yeah,
Is,
I mean, sure, because think about this. What is it? Only 7% of all registered businesses in Rhode Island are owned by people of color. I just told you 40% of our businesses are
Right.
owned by people of color. That's hugely disproportionate, right? And that's probably our fastest growing segment of companies. I went into a class. It was a ServSafe class a month ago, and that was the entire class. So I was, that is just getting us thinking about being more proximal to those communities, because it is a little bit of a challenge to get to Warren for some people. But if you think about it, Mark, those, like you say, those are folks that might have some familiarity with the food business. They want to bring their foodways and their food heritage to Rhode Island. Rhode Island is not clam cakes and chowder. That's not who we are. We are a wonderful, mixing pot, literally, of just incredibly diverse foods and foodways and food heritage that, as Hope and Main reflects that all day long. And it's really exciting because we can, bring those products to market, bring those businesses to market, and they are going to, employ other people in those communities, create more jobs. For every one food manufacturing job, food processing job, it creates 2.3 indirect jobs. It's a huge multiplier effect to have food. Food is manufacturing, right? So there's the graphic designers who make the labels. There's the people who make the containers. There's the truckers who come in and out of this place all day long with ingredients. There's the farmers that grow the food. So it is a terrific multiplier for our local economy.
I want to get back to the farmers in a second, but I have to agree with you. I'm Portuguese. And as you said, we're a huge melting pot. And I grew up on my grandmother and grandfather lived downstairs. We lived upstairs. And Portuguese food was certainly at the center of most of the things we did. Look at the number of Portuguese restaurants, not only in Warren, but across the state. Where
Yeah.
people are actually, in the same thing for Italian or Irish or other ethnic foods. There's great Caribbean restaurants up on the hill, in addition to restaurants that are Italian. But you talked about farm, and we always talk about farm to table as being a really important component of what we do here in the state. Are the people who are currently using Hope and Main reaching out to those local farmers? And because I know that they use the what am I thinking of? It's the farm to table portion of
Farm Fresh Market
Farm
Mobile.
Fresh.
Yes,
There you
yes,
go.
yes. So just a little fact, because I just got this information from Farm Fresh. Last year alone was like $250,000 of business from Farm Fresh to our Hope and Main makers. It was close to 800 orders, right? So when you think about these long supply chains across the country and food
Right.
coming from California with giant carbon footprints, what's better than to be able to, order locally from our local farmers, and to have a CPG business that's going to help keep them, in business, because it is like it's the mercantile economy. I like to say in 1915, when this school was built, if I had used the word local food, you would have looked at me like I was crazy, because your food can only come from close by, right? And now 100+ years later, it comes from everywhere, and we don't know where it comes from. And during COVID, those supply chains collapsed. So we want to have a stronger local food system, and that's a big part of our mission at Hope and Main.
And that local farm to table really is critical for not only for the people that are in Hope and Main, but also the local farmers, because it's a reliable area where they can sell their product and they can sell it at a reasonable price, and you don't have a lot of transportation costs involved. And I know that, people who are from, working at Hope and Main, I mean, price is really important. Their price point, and Lisa, you and I know, because we've talked about it, the margins for the restaurant
Margins,
industry
right.
and the food industry are very thin. And to be successful, you really have to understand what those margins are. And that's part of what you teach at Hope and Main.
Right, exactly.
I think, and you do some work with the SBDC, correct? I mean,
We
not
do.
only-
We do a lot of work, and a big shout out to Maggie because she is a rock star there. So many people. So we work with SBDC, we work with Rhode Island Commerce, and Julie Stelmazik and Doris Blanchard through Supply RI. So when you think about creating these local supply chains and we can close the loop locally, that's what we want to do, Mark, because when even the commissary, at Amica Insurance, buys local, that matters. That really matters. We've had some local school systems actually purchasing, Hope and Main products. So it took a long time to get there, but everyone knows now these are high quality products. They are competitive with anything else out there. And, and we have created a great supply to meet the demand for local food.
Lisa, is there any place where I could go and I can see the list of products that come out of Hope and Main?
Well, you could go on our website and see all the makers because we have a member directory. But one of the things that we do not do is sell the products ourselves, and there's a reason for that. We do not want to compete with Dave's Marketplace. We don't want to compete with the local farmers market because we want our members' products to be out there, creating destinations and bringing people into other stores. That's part of our philosophy of economic development. Having said that, we do have our own on-site market that's going to start June 15th, schoolyard markets every Wednesday from 4 to 7. And you can discover everything that's new in local food because we have our members start here because they meet the eater right away. They get feedback, they get some revenue going. And what's great for everyone who comes on Wednesday nights is they get to try every new thing that's coming out of Hope and Main and buy it. We always have Rhode Island Cruising Cocktails here, the cocktail truck. We have the food trucks that work out of here, and we have lots of great new products, hummus and salsa and baked goods that you can buy and give feedback directly to these new producers because that's what they're looking for to perfect their products.
So that's June the 7th, you said?
June 15th. June 15th starts every Wednesday from 4 to 7, schoolyard market. It's right at Hope and Main, and you can come meet the makers and try their products.
I had to write that down because my wife and I, we love to go down there and we love the farmers markets. I think they're absolutely fantastic. We've actually gone over our allotted time. Lisa, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, my friend.
It's so great to have you on, and you have so much to contribute, not only to Hope and Main, but hopefully we can find a place here in Providence that will be, allow you to expand. Thank you everyone for tuning in with us. We had a lot of people in. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.